John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, my name is John Ulzheimer, and I'm a consumer credit expert with almost 30 years of experience in the consumer credit industry. I've spent time at both FICO, the credit scoring company, and Equifax, one of the 3 recognized consumer credit reporting agencies. And today I'm going to discuss an uncommon but sometimes frustrating event that consumers run into with their credit reports and credit scores. There are some scenarios that I hear of where consumers are actually able to get collection accounts removed from their credit reports, but after they're able to do so, their scores actually go down rather than what they would expect to happen, which was to have their scores go up. And so today I'm going to explain a couple of reasons why this could happen. Since I don't have the particular consumer's credit reports, meaning I'm not sitting here looking at them, I'm going to have to do something that I don't necessarily like to do, which is speculate. So I'm going to preface this with the disclaimer that I'm speculating because I haven't seen any particular consumer's credit reports as to this issue. So there's actually 3 reasons why this could possibly happen. And I only have 2 of them listed on the board, but I can talk about the third. Well, I can actually write it down. So one of the reasons why is there's a possibility that there are other things on the credit report that changed when the collections were removed that caused the credit report to become more problematic from a scoring perspective. And so it's kind of a net issue. You may have gotten a couple of collections removed, which is great, but some other things may have actually overcompensated for the removal of the collections, say perhaps newer collections hitting the credit report, or all of a sudden your credit cards become maxed out. So there could be things that kind of balanced out and unfortunately kind of flipped the tilt to the bad side for the consumer. That's one of the reasons why, is that you've removed something that you think is harming your credit score, but unfortunately something else has happened on your credit report that has actually eaten up any gain that you would get and has actually left you with a lower score. So that can be very confusing. The first reason why this is happening is because in some scenarios, third-party collection accounts are reported as actual trade lines or actual accounts on the credit report, similarly to a credit card or a mortgage loan or an auto loan. And because they're in some scenarios reported as trade lines, they're actually treated differently than if they were reported as what's called a third-party collection account. So you can actually see collections appearing on credit reports 2 different ways, as third-party collection accounts and then also as trade lines. So here's what I think may be happening in that scenario. If you had collections that were very, very old, say, 6+ years old, and they were really close to being removed from the credit reports by the credit reporting agencies anyways because of the limitation as to how long that information can be reported, which is 7 years, it's very possible that if the consumer had collections reported as accounts and they had no other derogatory items on the credit report, and unfortunately they had no other older items on the credit report than the collection accounts, when you remove the collection accounts from the credit report, or the credit bureaus deleted the accounts from the credit report, you actually made your credit reports look younger because you've removed possibly 1 or 2 or multiple of the oldest accounts. You're lowering the average age of the accounts on your credit report, and you're also resetting the oldest account on the credit report to something much younger. And since the collections were so old already, they weren't really having any sort of a meaningful impact to the consumer score, and so by removing them from the report, you're not really getting any gain from the removal, but you're actually getting a penalty because the credit report looks younger than it did prior to the removal. So that's the second reason. The third reason is actually very complicated. It's it's kind of an inside baseball type of explanation. But there is a possibility, and this is very, very remote, that when you removed the collections from the credit report, if those were the only derogatory entries on the report, then you could have actually changed scoring environments or changed buckets, or the technical term is scorecards. So there are actually a variety of ways in a variety of environments that your credit report can be scored, and that is based entirely, in fact, on the information that's on your credit reports. And so if you have derogatory entries, you're actually being scored in derogatory scorecards. So they're actually treating you along with other credit reports that are similar to yours. And so it doesn't make sense to treat a consumer who's got a bankruptcy on their credit report with a consumer who has one account on their credit report. You have to treat those independently and measure them differently because they're so entirely different from a credit reporting perspective and a risk prediction perspective. So what may have happened in this scenario is if the consumer did have the collections removed from their credit reports and that was the only derogatory entries on the report, then they actually could have moved from one scorecard or scoring environment within a scoring model to another scoring environment within the same scoring model. And this is actually very, very common, but most of the time consumers don't even know about it and don't care because their scores just go up naturally up or down, and they don't really question why something really odd like the removal of a collection account could all of a sudden lead to a lower credit score. So there is a very remote possibility that by doing this, you actually went from a derogatory scoring environment to a different scoring environment that measures everything on the credit report differently. And in some of those scenarios, you actually were performing worse than you were in the scorecard where it was looking at derogatory entries primarily. And so if I had to rank these as the most logical and plausible explanation as to what happened, I would suggest that this is the number one likely explanation, that your credit report all of a sudden looks much younger because old collection accounts that were reported as accounts rather than third-party collections were removed, and now boom, all of a sudden your credit report looks considerably longer, which credit scoring models do not like. Number two, the second plausible explanation, I believe, if I had to rank them, was that there was just some other information on your credit report that got worse at the same time that the collections were removed, perhaps maxing out credit cards, or perhaps even a new delinquency that you didn't realize had hit your credit report completely netted out any gain you got from the removal of the collections. And then I think that this is actually a distant third possibility, is this changing of credit scoring environment. So if you do see something on your credit reports that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to you, you don't understand why, logically you might think, like a reasonable person might think, well, if I do this, then my score is going to go up, and if I do that, my score is going to go down. And if it's completely fruit basket turnover and you don't understand it, then here's a solution for you. Ask me in the comment section below, and if you can be very specific with your question, then I'll do my best to make another video about it and see if I can do my best to explain to you why it likely happened. So thank you very much for watching. Again, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to address them. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.